3 Canadian coins may look ordinary, but one hidden error in the weight, date, edge, or design could make a single piece worth thousands. Check every detail before spending them. The 2016 Canadian 25-cent coin may appear to be ordinary pocket change, but its most important clue could be hidden in a caribou's antlers, the edge, the metal, or a weight that does not match the official standard. This is the opening coin in our 3-coin journey, the 2016 Canadian quarter. Its reverse carries the famous caribou design created by Canadian artist Emmanuel Hahn. The design first appeared on Canada's quarter in 1937 and has since become one of the country's most recognizable circulation coin images. More than 100 million regular 2016 quarters were produced, so the date itself is not automatically rare. Most circulated pieces remain common and are generally worth only their face value unless they are in exceptional condition or display a genuine mint-made error. Therefore, a normal 2016 quarter should never be assumed to have a value between $22,000 and $61,000. To approach such a remarkable range, the coin would need an extraordinary authenticated error, such as being struck on the wrong planchet, receiving multiple strikes, showing a major off-center impression, or having an unusual composition confirmed by specialists. Begin your inspection on the obverse. This side features the uncrowned portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Canadian artist Susanna Blunt. The inscriptions, Elizabeth II, and D.G. Regina, appear around the portrait. Use a magnifying glass and inspect the Queen's hair, forehead, face, neckline, shoulder, letters, and rim. Look for clear doubling around the portrait and inscriptions. A genuine doubled die may display rounded secondary images, visible separation, or small notches where the duplicated design divides from the main image. Machine doubling is different. It normally appears flat, narrow, or shelf-like and is usually caused when the die shifts slightly as it moves away from the newly struck coin. Machine doubling is common and generally does not carry the same collector value as a genuine doubled die. Circulation damage can also make letters look doubled. A hit from another coin may push the metal sideways, creating an irregular ridge that should not be mistaken for a mint variety. Inspect the open fields around the Queen's portrait. A thin raised line may indicate a die crack. This error develops when the working die begins to fracture, allowing metal to flow into the crack during striking. Remember the difference: a die crack is raised above the coin's surface, while an ordinary scratch cuts into the surface. If a larger section of the die broke away near the rim, the coin might display a raised blob of metal called a cud. A large cud that removes or distorts part of the design may be more collectible than a tiny crack. Now turn the coin over. Begin with the antlers. Their long, narrow branches provide several areas where doubling, die chips, breaks, or incomplete details may appear. Look for extra branches, raised lumps, unusual thickness, or an apparent second outline. A small raised bump between the antlers may be a die chip. Minor chips are usually not extremely valuable, but a large chip that significantly changes the appearance of the design can attract greater collector interest. Study the caribou's eye, ear, muzzle, neck, back, legs, and ground line. Check whether any feature appears repeated or unusually weak. A weak section may result from wear, insufficient striking pressure, or grease blocking part of the die. When grease or debris fills a recessed part of the die, letters or design elements may fail to appear fully. This is known as a grease-filled die or struck-through grease error. A slightly weak letter normally adds little value. A large missing portion of the date, denomination, or word, Canada, without where explaining it, may deserve further examination. Pay close attention to the date 2016. Inspect every digit, especially the final 6. Look for rounded separation, small notches, missing sections, or numbers that appear repeated. A damaged digit can become thick, flat, or distorted after circulation. Genuine doubling should follow the original design in a consistent and organized way. Next, check the centering. A normal quarter should have a reasonably even rim around both sides. If the blank entered the striking chamber incorrectly, part of the caribou, date, lettering, or queen's portrait could be missing. This is called an off-center strike. A slight shift normally has limited value. A dramatic off-center error that still preserves the date and enough design to identify the coin may be considerably more desirable. Another possibility is a multiple strike. If the coin failed to leave the press after its first impression, it could have received a second strike in a different position. This might create a second portrait, additional antlers, repeated numbers, or overlapping lettering. A genuine multiple strike should display clear mint pressure, recognizable repeated elements, and natural metal flow. Random dents, flattened areas, or impressions created by machinery after the coin entered circulation are considered damage. Now examine the edge. The 2016 quarter should have a reeded edge with evenly spaced grooves. If the edge appears partly smooth, completely smooth, unusually wide, or distorted, compare it with another normal quarter. Heavy wear can weaken the reeds, so missing grooves alone do not prove an error. A malfunctioning retaining collar may allow the metal to expand outward during striking, creating a broad strike. This often produces a coin that appears wider and flatter than normal. Also inspect the quarter for a clipped planchet. A genuine clip occurs before striking when the blank is punched incorrectly from the metal strip. It may leave a curved section missing and create weakness on the opposite side. A coin cut after minting usually shows sharp tool marks, rough metal, or an unnatural edge. Now perform the weight test. A standard 2016 Canadian quarter should weigh approximately 4.4 grams, measure about 23.88 millimeters in diameter, and have a thickness near 1.58 millimeters. It is made from nickel-plated steel and should react to a magnet. Use a digital scale capable of measuring at least 1/100th of a gram. Place it on a stable surface, confirm that it reads 0, and weigh the quarter several times. If it weighs significantly more or less than 4.4 grams, it could indicate a wrong planchet, abnormal thickness, missing metal, or an unusual composition. A minor difference may come from wear, dirt, corrosion, or an inaccurate scale. Weight alone does not authenticate a mint error. Compare the diameter, thickness, color, magnetic reaction, edge, and amount of visible design. For example, a quarter struck on a smaller planchet may show missing outer letters and incomplete rims. A heavier or non-magnetic piece could suggest a different metal, but professional testing would be required before drawing a conclusion. Never scrape, cut, file, drill, or apply chemicals to test the coin. Now consider the stated potential range of $22,000 to $61,000. A normal 2016 quarter, a minor die crack, machine doubling, or ordinary circulation damage will not reach those figures. A coin approaching that range would likely need an exceptional wrong planchet error, dramatic multiple strike, major off-center strike, unusual composition, or an extremely rare combination of mint mistakes. Professional authentication and grading would be essential. If your quarter appears suspicious, hold it only by the edge. Record its exact weight, diameter, thickness, and magnetic response. Photograph both sides and the complete edge under clear lighting. Place it inside a non-PVC holder and never clean it. The 2016 Canadian quarter proves that a familiar coin can still contain an unfamiliar mistake. Keep your magnifying glass ready, because the second coin may reveal its secret in a completely different part of the design. Could this Saskatchewan quarter hide a mistake worth thousands? Check the bird, dates, weight, and edge before spending it. The second coin in our 3-coin video is the 2005 Canadian Saskatchewan Centennial 25-cent coin, marked with the years 1905 to 2005. This commemorative quarter was released to celebrate Saskatchewan's 100th anniversary as a Canadian province. Its reverse design was created by Saskatchewan wildlife artist Paulette Supergia and features the western meadowlark, Saskatchewan's official provincial bird. Millions of these quarters entered circulation, so a regular worn example is generally not rare. The dates 1905 to 2005 do not mean the coin was minted in 1905. The first date represents the year Saskatchewan became a province, while 2005 is the coin's actual year of issue. An ordinary Saskatchewan quarter does not automatically carry a value between $26,100 and $55,000. A coin approaching that range would need an extraordinary and professionally authenticated mint error, possibly involving the wrong planchet, multiple strikes, extreme misalignment, or an unusual metal composition. Start with the obverse. This side features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Susanna Blunt. The Queen appears without a crown, and the inscriptions, Elizabeth II, and D.G. Regina, surround the portrait. Use a magnifying glass to examine the Queen's hair, facial outline, neckline, letters, and rim. Look for clear doubling around Elizabeth II and Regina. A genuine doubled die can show visible separation, rounded secondary images, or small notches where the duplicated letters divide. Do not confuse this with machine doubling. Machine doubling usually looks flat, narrow, or shelf-like. Contact marks can also push the metal sideways and make a letter appear doubled, but this is normally circulation damage rather than a rare mint variety. Inspect the open fields around the portrait. A raised line may indicate a die crack. This forms when the die begins to fracture and metal flows into the crack during striking. A die crack rises above the coin's surface. A scratch caused after minting cuts into the metal. If a larger part of the die broke away near the rim, the coin could display a raised metal mass called a cut. Larger and clearer die breaks usually attract more attention than tiny cracks. Now turn the quarter over. The reverse presents a western meadowlark perched on a branch. The dates 1905 and 2005 appear above the bird, while Saskatchewan is displayed below. The denomination 25 cents and the word Canada are also included in the design. The meadowlark is the most important area to inspect. Study the beak, eye, feathers, wings, legs, tail, and branch. Because these details are narrow and closely spaced, they can reveal die chips, doubling, breaks, and incomplete strikes. A small raised lump near the beak, feathers, or branch could be a die chip. Tiny chips are usually not extremely valuable, but a dramatic chip that noticeably changes the bird's appearance can be more collectible. Examine both commemorative dates. Check whether 1905 or 2005 shows doubled numbers, missing sections, unusual thickness, or visible separation. Pay particular attention to the zeros and final 5. A damaged digit can look thick or distorted after being struck by another coin. Genuine mint doubling should follow the original shape in an organized way. Inspect every letter in Saskatchewan. Because the provincial name is long, collectors should look carefully for missing letters, weak sections, doubling, or die cracks crossing the inscription. A letter may be faint because grease or debris blocked the die. This is commonly called a grease-filled die or struck through grease error. Minor weakness normally adds little value. However, a major portion of the inscription, bird, or date missing without circulation where could deserve professional examination. Now study the coin's centering. A normal quarter should have a reasonably even rim around the portrait and commemorative design. If the blank entered the press incorrectly, part of the bird, dates, provincial name, or queen's portrait may be missing. This is known as an off-center strike. A slight shift is generally not highly valuable. A dramatic off-center example that still retains the date and enough design to identify the issue may be much more desirable. Another important possibility is a multiple strike. If the quarter remained inside the striking chamber after its first impression, it could have received a second strike in a different position. This might create two birds, repeated dates, overlapping letters, or a duplicated portrait. A genuine multiple strike should show strong mint pressure, recognizable repeated design, and natural metal movement. Random dents and flattened areas caused outside the mint are considered damage. Next, inspect the edge. The Saskatchewan quarter should have a reeded edge with evenly spaced grooves. If the edge is partly smooth, completely smooth, unusually wide, or distorted, compare it carefully with a normal 2005 quarter. Where can weaken the reeds, so a smooth area alone does not prove an error. If the collar failed during striking, the metal could spread outward and create a broad strike. This usually produces a wider, flatter coin with an unusual edge. Also check for clipped planchets. A genuine clip happens when the blank is incorrectly cut from the metal strip before striking. It can leave a curved section missing and may cause weakness on the opposite side. A quarter cut after leaving the mint often shows rough metal, sharp tool marks, or an unnatural edge. Now perform the weight test. A standard 2005 Saskatchewan Centennial quarter should weigh approximately 4.43 grams, measure about 23.88 millimeters in diameter, and have a thickness close to 1.58 millimeters. It is made from nickel-plated steel and should react to a magnet. Use an accurate digital scale and weigh the coin several times. If it weighs significantly more or less than approximately 4.43 grams, it may have been struck on the wrong planchet, produced from an unusual blank, or created with an abnormal thickness or composition. Small differences may result from wear, dirt, corrosion, or scale inaccuracy. Weight alone does not authenticate an error. Compare the diameter, thickness, color, magnetic reaction, edge, and amount of visible design. For example, a Saskatchewan design struck on a smaller blank could show missing outer letters or incomplete rims. A heavier or non-magnetic example could suggest a different metal, but only professional testing can confirm the cause. Never scrape, file, drill, or use chemicals to test the composition. Now consider the stated potential range of $26,100 to $55,000. A normal circulated Saskatchewan quarter, a tiny die chip, weak lettering, or machine doubling will not reach that range. To approach such figures, the coin would likely need an exceptional error such as a wrong planchet, dramatic multiple strike, major off-center strike, unusual composition, or an extremely rare combination of mint mistakes. Professional authentication and grading would be essential. If your coin appears unusual, hold it only by the edge. Record its exact weight, diameter, magnetic response, and thickness. Photograph both sides and the entire reeded edge under clear lighting. Place it inside a non-PVC holder and never clean it. The Saskatchewan Centennial quarter carries a meaningful piece of Canadian history, but its true numismatic surprise may be hidden in the meadowlark, the two dates, the long provincial name, or a weight that does not belong. Keep your magnifying glass ready for the final coin, because its most valuable clue may appear where collectors least expect to find it. A 5-cent coin celebrating 50 royal years could hide a mistake worth serious money. Check the dual date, beaver, letter P, and exact weight. Our final discovery is the Canadian 1952 to 2002 5-cent coin, issued in 2002 to commemorate Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. The two dates do not mean this nickel was produced in 1952. That year marks the beginning of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, while 2002 is the actual year in which the commemorative coin entered circulation. Millions of these coins were produced, so an ordinary example is generally worth only a modest amount. The dual date alone does not make it rare. To approach the stated range of $19,850 to $33,320, the coin would need an extraordinary authenticated mint error, an exceptionally rare production variety, or a dramatic combination of abnormalities. Begin with the obverse. This side features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Dora de Pettery Hunt. Around the portrait appear the inscriptions identifying the monarch, while the dual date 1952 to 2002 commemorates 50 years of her reign. Examine the Queen's hair, forehead, facial outline, neckline, lettering, and both dates under magnification. Pay close attention to 1952 to 2002. Look for clear doubling, missing digits, unusual spacing, or numbers that appear thicker than normal. Genuine double die characteristics may show rounded secondary images, visible separation, or small notches where the duplicated elements divide. Machine doubling usually appears flat, narrow, or shelf-like. Contact marks from circulation can also distort a number, but random damage does not have the organized appearance of a mint-created variety. Inspect the letter P beneath the portrait. On this issue, the P identifies the plated steel composition. It is not automatically a rare mint mark or error. However, examine it for unusual doubling, partial absence, or distortion. A weak P could result from grease or debris filling the die, but wear and impacts can produce a similar appearance. Now turn the coin over. The reverse displays the familiar Canadian beaver standing on a rock. The design was created by artist George Kruger Gray and has appeared on Canada's 5-cent coin for many decades. The inscription, Canada, appears above the animal, while 5 cents is positioned below. Begin with the beaver's body. Study the eye, ear, nose, fur, paws, tail, and the rock beneath it. Fine lines in the fur and tail are useful places to search for doubling, die chips, and cracks. A small raised lump near the eye, nose, or tail may be a die chip. Tiny chips are usually not extremely valuable, but a large chip that changes the appearance of the animal can attract more collector attention. Look for raised lines crossing the beaver, rock, lettering, or open fields. A raised line may be a die crack formed when the working die began to fracture. Metal entered that crack during the strike and created a raised feature on the finished coin. A scratch caused after minting cuts into the surface instead. If a larger section of the die broke away near the rim, the coin could show a raised mass of metal called a cud. Large, clearly defined cuds are generally more desirable than minor cracks. Inspect, Canada, and 5 cents. Missing or weak letters may indicate a grease-filled die. When grease blocks part of the design, the metal cannot flow completely into the recessed area of the die. Minor weakness normally adds little value. A dramatic missing word or denomination, with no circulation where explaining it, may deserve closer evaluation. Next, examine the coin's centering. A normal nickel should have a reasonably even rim around both sides. If the blank entered the press incorrectly, part of the queen's portrait, dual date, beaver, or lettering may be missing. This is called an off-center strike. A tiny shift is usually not important. A major off-center strike that still displays enough information to identify the coin can be significantly more collectible. Another possibility is a multiple strike. If the coin remained inside the striking chamber after the first impression, it might have received another strike in a different position. This could produce two portraits, repeated dates, an extra beaver, or overlapping lettering. A genuine multiple strike should display strong mint pressure, recognizable repeated elements, and natural movement of the metal. Random dents, flattened areas, or impressions created by tools outside the mint are considered damage. Now inspect the edge. The standard 2002 5-cent coin has a plain edge. Look for unusual expansion, folds, missing metal, or an abnormal shape. If the retaining collar failed during striking, the metal could spread beyond its normal diameter and create a broad strike. Such a coin may appear wider and flatter, with an incomplete rim. Also check for a clipped planchet. A genuine clip occurs before striking when the blank is punched incorrectly from the metal strip. It may leave a curved section missing and produce weakness opposite the clipped area. A coin cut after leaving the mint usually shows tool marks, sharp corners, rough metal, or unnatural bending. Now perform one of the most important tests, weigh the coin. A normal 1952 to 2002 5-cent coin marked with the letter P should weigh approximately 3.95 grams and measure about 21.2 millimeters in diameter. It is produced from multiply plated steel and should react strongly to a magnet. Use a precise digital scale and weigh the coin several times on a stable surface. If it weighs considerably more or less than 3.95 grams, it could indicate a wrong planchet, unusual thickness, missing plating, or a blank intended for another denomination. A tiny difference may result from wear, dirt, corrosion, or an inaccurate scale. Weight alone does not prove a mint error. Compare the coin's diameter, thickness, color, magnetic response, edge, and visible amount of design. A coin struck on a smaller planchet may lose parts of the outer lettering. A heavier, larger, or non-magnetic example could suggest a different metal, but professional testing would be required. Never scrape, drill, file, or apply chemicals to identify the composition. Now consider the potential range of $19,850 to $33,320. A normal circulated coin, weak letter, small die chip, scratch, or machine doubling will not reach those figures. A piece approaching that range would likely need an extraordinary wrong planchet error, dramatic multiple strike, major off-center strike, unusual composition, or another exceptionally rare and authenticated mint mistake. If your coin appears suspicious, hold it only by the edge. Record its exact weight, diameter, thickness, and magnetic response. Photograph both sides and the complete edge under clear lighting. Place it inside a non-PVC holder and never clean it. These 3 Canadian coins prove that valuable clues may hide in completely different places, from a caribou's antlers and a Saskatchewan meadowlark to a small letter P beside a royal portrait. Subscribe, activate notifications, and tell us which coin you found. Your next piece of Canadian pocket change could contain a mistake that most people would never notice.